welcome to Two Steps Ahead Podcast. Two Steps Ahead Podcast, highlighting the stuff we've stepped in so you don't have to. I'm Son Edom, alongside somebody who has been celebrating her quarantined birthday for the past week. Now, I've often said she's a diva.
Yes.
So how has your week been? Has it been diva-esque?
Well, I'm wearing my fur today,
yeah,
so I'm a little extra today because I'm still celebrating my diva quarantine birthday.
So how is it having a quarantined birthday versus a non-quarantined birthday?
It's actually quite nice.
Is it?
Well, because there's no expectations. Like, we can't really do anything.
True.
Right? And so we're here with the family, cooking dinner. Like, what's better than that?
But isn't that how it should be? Non-expectations. Now, have we actually hit now true reality of what it should be versus what we want it to be with the big pomp and circumstance?
But there's always that part where people are saying, oh, I don't know the right gift. Is she going to like it? Are they going to like it? There's always a little bit of tension around making sure, that the person is given a good birthday and they're taken care of and the right, gifts and the right presents. I'm not fussy. I'm not really a diva. Like, I'm not really that fussy. I'm pretty easy to please. But, there is that. So now it's just like, okay, there's no gifts because there's no stores open. And if you order anything online, it's like, it'll be here in July.
You actually went to order something for you, and it said it'll be here in August.
See, there you go.
So I don't want you to think that I didn't get you something.
Right.
But it's coming. It's on back order.
It's on back order until August. See, so there's no expectation. It's easier, I think.
Which is funny because when I would be at a place, work, and we would draw names or something like that, I would always get lottery tickets as the gift because you can't go wrong with lottery tickets because if they win, and I think one time, a guy actually won, not like millions or anything like that, but probably a significant amount of money because I would always ask them, hey, so you win anything? And I always get no. And so the one year I said, hey, you win anything? And he just kind of brushed me off, thinking that maybe I won some, piece
part
of it.
Yeah.
But no. So I think he won something, but he didn't tell me what. But so, yeah. So yeah, you don't want to share. Selfish. So so that's what I would do is that, in those type of situations because they're fun, and whatever happens. But yeah, so anyway, so that's good. You're still celebrating the realistic version of a birthday.
I am. Good. I am. I've got lots of birthday wishes. Thank you for all the lovely wishes on my Instagram and Facebook.
Keep them coming. Makes her feel good. When she feels good, easy to work with. At Tara Hoke Shiro, keep them coming. Makes my job a lot easier.
Yes, it does.
Hey, so last week on the show, we were talking about not Lion King, although I recommend Lion King over Tiger King. And it led to a conversation about people. And the conversation, in fact, is probably easier if you just go back and listen to the last episode. But we talked about these people on the zoo farm or whatever it is.
On Tiger King.
On Tiger King, when they live there on the grounds, because I guess they lived there for a while. And for example, the campaign manager, if you know what we're talking about, the campaign manager for Joe Exotic, who ran for governor or president, whatever he ran for.
Governor.
He was there for a year and a half, and he just thought it was crazy, but he never left. So here's a guy that could actually leave, but he never left. And so it got me thinking and brought up the conversation about people and, why can't they just leave? Why can't they better themselves? Why can't they do something because you only have one life to live and we should live it to the best that we can. And as ourselves, like for me, I see a hurdle, I see an obstacle, I'm going to go around it, over it, through it, whatever I have to. And for you, it was just the opposite. It was, I guess shame was the word that was kind of brought up with you, which leads me to a question that I will ask you in a minute. But first, I just wanted to give you an opportunity to kind of, as we jump off of last week into this week, because we kind of ran out of time, to kind of get us back into that conversation of what we were doing, because you were kind of wrapping up the conversation as we were ending the episode, so you can kind of continue on for us to get the conversation started.
That's right. So I was mentioning that, we were coming from two different places. Like, I don't understand that you can just say, not get a contract renewal for your job. And you're like, okay, next. You just have this way of just constantly moving forward. I, on the other hand, have this way of stopping. So I'll start to be, start a project or start to be, move towards a successful something. And then I will inevitably kind of sabotage that because my shame has been so deep. Now it's not on the line of continuum. It's not nearly as bad as it used to be, but there was a time in my life when it was really bad. So, and I would not move forward in the way of not, finish a project or not go after a job or not do something because I just felt like, I was just not, good enough or couldn't keep up or wasn't as smart as my peers. I hadn't accomplished as much. And so I would kind of pull back, and not move forward. So that belief system would stop me in my tracks.
Now you said the definition of guilt versus the definition of shame. Hit us with that again.
Mm-hmm. So guilt is something that I've done wrong and I feel bad about it. Shame is a feeling that I am something wrong, like I'm defective.
So you mentioned that you had shame. So you're defective. Something's wrong with you. It's not something you did. It's something you feel that you're wrong. Okay.
Right.
So you've got this feeling of shame. So you're defective. You're the problem. But yet you were still able to publish a couple books. You were able to get through school. You're able to accomplish some things. So how does that work? If you have shame where you're defective, you're the problem, it's not something you did, an action like guilt, but you are the problem. How were you able to accomplish those things, having that shame and having that low self-esteem maybe? I don't know.
It was a battle. It was a complete battle. So I got my degree, actually my bachelor degree in my 30s, I believe, in my late 30s. It took me all of that time. There were some other things, going on in life that it just wasn't the right season, but it also took me that long to come around to the fact that I could actually survive in a university. I never thought that I could pull that off. So, and then once I got there, I was amazed. Number one, I was amazed that I was accepted. I came from community college, so it was an easy transfer. So then I was amazed that I was even there. And then I was getting A's and B's. In high school, I was getting B's and C's and D's. So I was amazed that I was like, wow, I'm not, I can actually study and I am, smart enough to pull this off. So then later, when I wrote the 2 books, particularly No Arms, No Legs, No Problem, it took 7 years. Part of that was that Bob and I live in 2 different states. And so he's in Alabama, I'm in California. So the logistics were not easy. So we were passing things back and forth through the mail to get it written. And then he had delays on his side. There were legitimate life things that got in the way. I think he had a death in the family or somebody close to him during one of the seasons. He also was playing rugby actively. He plays quad rugby. He was in the Paralympics. And so there were seasons when he just wasn't available, because he was all up in the sports. And there were seasons that I wasn't available. There were things going on here with my family that, but all of that aside, all of our schedules and locations aside, it still came down to the fact that I had to believe in myself that I could pull this off. And in a lot of ways, I didn't. I would sit down at my desk. I'm like, what am I doing? I mean, this is kind of a normal thing that writers go through. If you read, biographies or whatever, they'll all say like, okay, this was a brilliant idea. And then I started doing it. And I'm like, okay, what am I thinking? Right. But at some point we have to get over that. And it took me 7 years to get over that hump and actually publish it and get it, for sale. And so there were times when I would sit down at my computer and literally my body would just be in pain. And I would have to put like a sign up in front of me, like, I don't remember, something like you can do this, or, it would have like some sort of a goal. And I would just keep saying over and over in myself, I can do this, I can do this, I can do this, not really believing it, but just like, and my body would just be in pain, like moving that forward. So it's kind of, it's a challenge to put yourself out there, is a challenge too, because you feel naked. Like this book's going to be sitting on someone's coffee table that I don't even know. People are going to be reading it and this is going to be out there. It feels very vulnerable. And so I was taking it a little more personal than maybe what I should have, because I know instinctively as a writer, your story has to stand up on its own legs. It's got to go out there and be, do its own thing. But I was like, oh my gosh, it's got to, people are, it's not going to be good. People are going to make fun of it. And so I was so I had to talk myself daily towards the end. I'm like, but because there's also a fighter in me too. I'm also very competitive. I'm also a fighter in other areas. So it was a struggle. It was a struggle.
See, I think the fighter in you, from what you're talking about, is what probably drove you, whereas others that are in a similar situation where they're dealing with the shame, where they're the defective ones, so to speak, not that you are, that's just the definition I'm using, they probably don't have a fight in them maybe, and maybe that's why they get complacent into their environment. I remember one time you mentioned something to the effect that you had the bookstore and something about you wanted or hoped one day that your book would be on the shelf at Barnes & Noble. First off, did it ever make it?
So I self-published through that particular book. I self-published through Amazon. I did have a couple of book signings at Barnes & Noble. It was on the shelf for a time at the local Barnes & Noble, and I cried. I was in tears. Yeah, I'm like, oh my gosh, my book is, sitting on the shelf. And somehow that made me feel worthier or accepted, as a writer. The book is good. Like Bob has a phenomenal story, but I'm very proud of that work, the way that because I fought for it. But talking about shame, like Brene Brown has tons of stuff. If you've never read anything or listened to Brene Brown on YouTube or podcast, highly recommend it. Because she talks about, that's her whole study. I mean, that's all she does is study shame. But, the fighter in me, like, we can fight it, but we have to not give up. We have to fight until we, kind of cross over, to the other side. And so I think that, there's that cliche, our life doesn't change until the pain of where we are is greater than the pain of changing. So, the pain of where I was, of not being accomplished, got so severe that I just kept okay, I just got to do this. I just got to do it. I just got to do it. And there was, and so the fighter, I was a fighter, and I just got it in my head. Like, I am going to make this happen. I am going to publish this book. I'm going to, put all the voices aside saying I can't do it. And I'm just going to make this happen. And so there are certain parts of my life like that one. There's other parts of my life where I'm just a fighter and I'm not going to give up. And then there's other, like we had talked about last week on the podcast, somebody said something to me last night and I'm like right back to square one. I'm like, I cannot believe they said that to me. And it hurt. It really hurt. So I don't know. I mean, we play this, back and forth game a lot. If it's my skill sets, I'm stronger. If it's me, my personality, my identity, then I'm like, okay, now you've cut me deeper and it's harder for me to overcome that because I have to answer, am I or am I not good enough? What is the truth?
See, I look at it this way. Even if the book sucked, and I know some people that have self-published books, and I'm not going to mention them, but the book's not very good. Mm-hmm. But you wrote a book and you published a book, and that's something I haven't done. Mm-hmm. So that's kudos to you because you created something that I won't do. The other thing, too, my mentality would be instead of I hope my book's on the shelf, my mentality is always my book will be on that shelf.
Mm-hmm. Well, it did shift to that later.
Okay,
that's kind of like what got me over. It's like, oh, I really want to be in here. And then I'm like, no, gosh darn it, it is going to be in here. And that's kind of like at the very end, that's what, but I had to fight. I had to wrestle with that question. Am I not good enough to do this? I had to decide which way I was going to go. And once I decided like, you know what, I'm just going to do this. That's what got me through. So if I would have chosen the other one, that I'm not capable of writing a book, publishers don't want it, whatever, I could have chosen that path and it never would have been published. Or at the very end, I'm like, gosh darn it, this is crazy. Like, I'm going to make this happen. Come hell or high water, it's going to be published. And I self-published it and I made it happen. Bob is still doing book signings. He's still ordering books. It's still out there. It's still on Amazon.
See, I find that interesting because, one, my book may never get to the shelf, but that's still my mentality is going to get to that shelf. Mm-hmm. And I've done that with radio. I'm going to do X, Y, Z. Now I may not get there because of whatever reason, but I don't doubt myself that I'm not good enough to be there because I do think I am. But here's the other thing too. There was I don't remember where I heard the expression or saw it or whatever, but it has to do with people that are bilingual. Mm-hmm. So I know a gal who is Spanish, Mexican, and Spanish is her first language. And so when I first met her, her English wasn't as fluent as perhaps others, but I was still able to understand her as fine. Now, she was aware of the fact that her English wasn't as smooth and fluent. And there'd be a time or two where I might have to be like, what? But it was okay. Now I can completely understand because I'm used to it. But here's the thing. So someone might look at that as, hey, the English isn't very good. That's a bad thing. I look at it as, I'm not bilingual. So you got 2 languages on me. And even though one of them might not be the best, it's your second language. If I spoke another language, I'm sure my pronunciation and stuff like that would be horrible. And so that's just to be expected, eh? But you got 2 languages. And in fact, now I think she's working on a third. I think she's trying to learn German.
Wow.
So, so there's someone that even though.
Very smart.
Yeah. So there's someone that has accomplished something. And so instead of it being a negative, okay, English might not be the best thing or it might be the most fluent. It's still a second language and even a third language coming. And so that's something that's achieved that I haven't even been able to do.
Right.
And if I was able to, let's say, speak Spanish, because, I've had some students in the past where I've tried to do a little bit of Spanish and they always mock me and laugh at me because my accent and my stuff isn't very good. But that's to be expected. So again, you wrote a book, and whether or not it got to Barnes and Nobles or not, the fact that you wrote a book, or anybody that wrote a book, students in the past that I've had where they come to the radio program and they'd be like, I want to do this, but I don't know if I can. And I always tell them, let's not worry about where you are now. Let's worry about where you are in the future. And so they take a couple classes, they do a couple things, and they start to click and they start to get more comfortable and confident. And now they're doing something. And now they're doing something that they never thought they could do.
Right.
Take people that do podcasts. Okay. There's a lot of people that like to do podcasts, and some of them aren't very good. Maybe we're not good. I don't know, but we're going to continue to do it because I just enjoy doing it. So you have to deal with us. But the point is that, okay, you're doing something that someone else isn't doing. It's always interesting to hear these critics, film critics, clothes critics. All they're doing is criticizing something that they can't do. They're criticizing even sports broadcasters that are analysts that may have never played the sport. It's easy to criticize, but have you ever done it? Have you ever tried to learn another language? Have you ever tried to write a book? Have you ever tried to design clothes? Have you ever tried to do a podcast? Okay, it might not be your passion. It might not be what you want to do, but are you going to be quick to criticize something that you can't do?
Yeah,
or you
that's
don't want
what
to do?
Brene Brown talks about being in the arena. She said she has no interest in the critics who are not in the arena getting beat up and doing their passion, whatever their craft is. If you're not out there exposing yourself and being vulnerable, then you're right. That voice isn't valid. So there's a lot of, but we take that, right? And so when people say things to us, it's like, oh my gosh, that really hurts. But then, are they putting themselves out there like that? No. Because it is painful, because when you create something, and that's why the dance, I think that I go back and forth with the shame thing, because, so like there's another side of me that is very competitive. And so when I was, working on my bachelor degree in English at CSUN, I was in creative writing, and we had this workshop class. And the assignment was to write a short story. And then every week we would workshop or roundtable someone's, short story. So I would write the story. I would make 20 copies, bring it to class, hand it out to the 20 students in the class. We would all go home. The next week we would come back, and they would bring the story back of whoever's, had that, bring back the story. Then they would critique it out loud. And so the writer had to sit in the circle and be completely silent. They're not allowed to defend it like, oh, I wrote this character because of this, or the reason why I did it that way. Couldn't defend yourself at all. So I would sit and listen to the 20 people critique my story out loud. And then at the end of class, they would hand me their 20 edits or their 20 critiques, and I would take them home, and then I would go through and read them. And so if there was a comment about like the character wasn't consistent, or the narrative voice wasn't flowing, or there was a tangential plot line, or there was the timing and the pacing was off, or whatever it was, I would take different colored highlighters and highlight, pink for character, blue for scene taste, pacing and timing and all that. And then I would take those 20 stories and literally lay them on the floor in front of me, and then stand above them, to like at the macro view. And then I would look, and so if there was 10 yellows, or 20 blues, then I would say, okay, that needs to be fixed in the story. That's a problem. If there was one pink, okay, well, that person just didn't get it. And so I would kind of objectively, and then I would I would edit the story based on those objective, observations of the story. I didn't take that personal. For some reason, that thrilled me beyond belief. I loved that class. I loved the competition of like putting out a story and seeing how it was going to be received. For some reason, that just thrilled me to no end. There was one guy, I remember when it was his turn, he would come to class in a hoodie, and he would bring the hoodie when it was time to talk about his story. He would bring it down and tie the string so you could barely see his eyes and his mouth. He would put on a coat and a scarf and like he would completely cover up and then like curl down and just sit there like in a fetal position, sitting up until we were done talking about his story. Like he hated it. So, and I thought that was fascinating to watch. And then at the end he would like unzip and come back out and go take a smoke or whatever. So in that respect, I was able to handle. It was like a thrill, like a challenge, right? But then when I published the book, it's like my heart and soul is in that book, and it's going to go out there without me, and I don't know what people are going to think. For some reason, I took that more personal.
See, I would think you would be the one with the Unabomber look
I know,
in the
right?
classroom. As you're telling the story, I'm thinking how you're shrinking. You're like, no, give it to me.
Yeah.
Which I find kind of fascinating.
It's weird. Yeah, I don't get it. There's so I bounce back and forth.
I do have one question, though.
Yeah.
What color was Tangenial?
What color was Tangenial? I
Only
have no
a creative
idea.
writer, creative writing major would use Tangenial.
Tangenial plot lines.
Tangenial. Word of the day is tangenial. No, but that's interesting because, again, you're the problem. When we talk about shame, we're talking about shame. And the definition of shame versus guilt is?
Guilt is I did something wrong. Shame is I am something wrong.
So we're talking about shame. So I am the problem. I'm the defective one. I'm the wrong. So for you having shame problems or an issue, not a problem, but issues that you're trying to overcome, it's interesting that you're able to kind of separate the fact that, when you say,
Shrink me.
yes, when you say that it's okay for people to criticize you in the classroom,
Yeah.
where you can see them, they can see you, and you thrive on that. And so you get your tangenial colors and you put them all together, and then you micro or macro view them. And then you say, okay, this is a problem, I'll fix this. No, I don't need to. But then when the book gets out there to nobody and you'll never have any contact with them, why would that bother you? Because you have no idea that what they're going to think. They might be good, it might be bad, but who cares? Whereas the people that are in front of you.
Yeah, I have an answer for that. I haven't thought about that before. That's an excellent question. Here's the answer, I think, because in the classroom, safety was created.
Yeah.
And there were rules, like what people could say and what they couldn't say. They were not allowed to say, I like this, I hate this. They had to give evidence of, okay, the character is a 10-year-old and they're using words that a 10-year-old wouldn't know. So that's a conflict in that character's personality. That's and so, or like a tangential plot line, like, okay, your plot line is A, but then now you're bringing up B, C, and D, and so now I don't know what the story is about. So you could give those types of critiques, but not like, oh, I hate this, or the writer obviously didn't know what they were doing. They couldn't say those types of things. It was all about the work and only about the work. And so in that safe environment, it was like, yeah, let's go. Let's just do it. And I can do this. I can figure this out. You take away that safety. You take away the way that, now people don't have rules that they're abiding by. They're just going to judge you based on their own life. And that is scary because you don't know what they're going to do with your work.
But the point is they bought the book.
They did. And we have 51 or 52-ish 52 5-star reviews.
Yeah. And so see, that would be
on Amazon.
Okay. How many negative or 1 star, 2 stars,
0,
3 stars,
0,
4,
0,
all 5.
all 5.
So there you go. So,
50,
and
yeah.
again, most of the time people that are going to respond, well, usually they're going to be negative because usually the squeaky wheel gets the grease,
Right.
and the complainers are the ones that are going to be the ones. Most of the time you're going to get, not hate mail, but, hey, your show sucks versus, I really like your show.
No, I do. I will say on Goodreads, sorry, I have to be be clear. I will say on Goodreads, I did get 1 3-star review.
But still, you're getting of the people, because a majority of the people won't respond. They just won't care. They don't take the time.
Right.
You know, hey, you want to fill out a survey? No, I don't want to fill out a survey. But I always say that at the end of a conversation, hey, would you mind filling? Oh, sure, of course. And then I hang up.
Right.
Nobody wants to do a survey. But the people that do are taking the time to review you.
Yeah.
And they're giving you a positive review. That's got to be a little simple, non-scientific probably, but a simple model, so to speak, about how successful, how well received the book is doing, because you're not getting any real negative reviews. And people, I've seen people slam products, you know, and that's what happens. You get something, a product, and it's horrible. You need to vent and you need to slam something. So you're going to Yelp, you're going to reviews. That's your revenge, is by slamming them, because you're going to take it out on them, because that's your only course, your recourse is to give them a negative rating. And nobody's really doing that. So that must mean that the book is being well received by people that you're never going to hear from. And so why even care?
And even the lady that gave the 3-star review, she said,
too expensive.
She said, no, the review said the writing is not that great, but she couldn't put it down. And I'm like, okay, how does that work? If you can't put it down and you're fascinated by the story, but the writing isn't that great, like
well, that gets us back to Tiger King. It's a horrible show, but you can't stop watching.
It's a train wreck that you cannot look away from.
So maybe that's it. Maybe a book was a train wreck in her mind, but she couldn't stop putting it down.
Maybe.
You know? No, but see, that's where it's kind of fascinating, that you're able to separate kind of a professional critique and criticism, and there's no shame, versus a personal kind of attack, so to speak, and there's shame, but you're able to separate it. And I don't think a lot of people really can't do that. I don't think people have a hard time separating that, because they take their shame into wherever it is they're going.
Yeah. And we've even said that. I say that all the time. Wherever you go, there you are. Like we're the same person in every circumstance. So, you know, I don't know. I would have to, I haven't thought about that class in a while. I'd have to go back and think about it some more to see if there were some signs in me that probably, you know, I was, at that time I had not written the book. And so there was probably a part in me that says, oh yeah, this is fine, but I could probably never write a book or something. You know, I don't know. I'd have to go back and look at that. But I think I do, you know, compartmentalize. There are certain things where I'm just, you know, on fire and I am not backing down. And then there are other things that I'm like, oh my gosh, this is terrifying. So like when I first started blogging, I haven't blogged in a while, but I do have 2 blogs that I was writing on. The first time that I made a blog post and I was ready to hit the submit button, I was terrified. And as soon as I did, I was like, I just felt so naked. I'm like, oh my gosh. Like, it's out there. Like, what are people going to think? It was awful. Now I can sit here in front of a microphone and a camera and talk, and we published it and I don't bat an eye. So it's taken me a long time on that journey to get to this point, but that's what holds a lot of people back, is like, oh, people say that to me all the time. I could never be a writer because I just have to perfect it and it's just never right. And I'm just never comfortable with it. And I said, well, neither am I. But that's just part of the deal. You have to get comfortable being uncomfortable. You have to get comfortable being vulnerable, transparent. Like, there's just no other way around it. The anecdote, Brene Brown will say all the time, the anecdote to shame is vulnerability and being real. That's how and a lot of it's that transition is so painful sometimes.
So I think a lot of people live in fear, and not necessarily fear of the boogeyman or the Baba Yaga or the monster under the bed or whatever, right? I'm trying to use some...
is that a real thing, the Baba Yaga?
Yeah, it's Russian for boogeyman.
Oh.
I'm trying to use some tangential
good
plot lines here to make it relevant. No, but people are afraid, okay? They live in fear. And again, not afraid of the boogeyman or the monster under the bed, stuff like that, but they're afraid of failure. For example, hey, you want to do karaoke? Not karaoke. Karaoke. No, why? I'm not very good. They're afraid to get up there and be bad at singing.
Yes.
But that's the whole point of it.
Right.
The whole point is to do something fun. You're not supposed to be, nobody wants to hear a good singer. Because first of all, everybody's probably drinking, so you probably sound better than you are anyways. But that's the whole point, just getting up there and having fun. Or fear of the microphone. You know, people will get up and talk, and they could be talkers, but you stick a microphone in front of them, and they clam up because they're afraid that their mistake is going to be amplified. Okay? And so that's the thing that people don't understand, is that you can't live in that fear of failure, because what happens is you will fail. You know, it's kind of like the athlete's perspective of, do you want the ball at the buzzer? Okay, you can shoot, you can either make it or you cannot make it. You can be the hero or the GOAT.
Right.
Well, champions want to be that GOAT. And I'm not talking about the greatest of all time. I'm talking about the scapegoat. You missed the shot, therefore you're the reason why we lost.
Right.
They want that because they know, first off, they have the confidence that they're going to put the ball in or they're going to make the big hit or make the big play. And so they have the confidence, knowing that they're probably going to fail too. There's a good chance of failure. Because in baseball, you know, if you fail 7 out of 10 times batting, you're probably an all-star, if not a Hall of Famer.
Right.
You know, Barry Bonds, who has the most home runs ever, has many more strikeouts, which is the ultimate failure when you bat, you know, than he does home runs.
Well, we were talking about resilience the other day, right?
Yeah, a couple weeks ago.
And part of resilience is being able to integrate failure and normalize failure and look at opportunity as a challenge. And that's exactly what you're saying, is like, if you're having that many strikeouts, but you have to go through those strikeouts in order to get the home runs.
Yeah, I think you learn more from failure than you do success.
Absolutely.
Because if you're just succeeding, then you become complacent, you become whatever. And if you're failing, you're always looking to improve. Okay, what did I do wrong? How am I going to get better? So, okay, karaoke, use that stupid analogy. If I'm going to get up and sing, I'm going to pick a song that I think is that I can do. I can't sing, so I know it's going to suck. And it's going to be horrible. It's going to be the worst thing ever for your ears. But I'm going to pick a song that maybe the audience can sing along with or incorporate something. Or I'm going to pick a song that I really know so well that maybe then I can change the lyrics on as I sing. You know, throw in my own lyrics, because we all make up our own lyrics anyways to songs that we don't know what the lyrics are. You know, something creative and fun. And then if it was a good reception to it, I'd be like, okay, maybe I do it again in another place another time, or maybe I'll do another song and try something else out. If you're doing, I mean, radio is the biggest place where you try and fail things. You know, you try to do things and they fail or they're successful. But without failure, you can't learn to appreciate success. And that's why I don't understand why people would be afraid to try something. And
because
failure.
That brings us right back. I was just going to interrupt you because it brings us right back to shame. Because if we don't have, if we think that our failure is us, right? So I carried shame for many, many years. And in the height of it, it's that my story isn't failing or my karaoke isn't failing. I'm failing, right? If I don't make this product good enough to sell, then it's not about the product. It's about, that's what shame tells you. It lies to you. It tricks you. So a lot of people thinking like, oh my gosh, I could never speak in public. I could never do a podcast or be on, whatever. It's because they're in their mind, if they fail, that means they are a failure. And so we have to get to the point in our psyche that we're normalizing our behavior, as that failure is normal. And we have to be able to integrate that. Just like, okay, well, I'm not, there's nothing wrong with me. I just have to practice and get it right. And so that's the mindset, the shift that has to take place if we're going to get out of that shame cycle. And a lot of people just can't get out. They don't have a success, or they don't have someone investing in them, or someone seeing them, or someone, or listening to I get a lot of my inspiration from books or from, sermons or from speakers or whatever. And I take that in. I'm like, yeah. Okay. I believe that I can do it. Some other person, I've been with people and they don't get that sense at all. They're like, oh yeah, good for them, but I could never do that. They don't, because again, it's shame. It's like they don't believe that they can, that the message is for them.
I get my inspiration from music. Life's a journey, not a destination. So enjoy the ride. Take your passion, make it happen. Only the bravest try, where eagles and angels dare to fly. Things like that motivate me. But see, that's well, I guess it's just, I just don't have the chemistry or the makeup to understand that, because it's not you failing. Sure, it's technically you failing, but it's that thing that failed. So then try something different, try something new.
I think if there's, I think it's just those seeds that are given to us when we're young, and it's put in there.
So when did shame begin for you? I don't know if we can talk about that, because I know there's all kinds of things that go into it. So I don't know if it can fit into the time constraints of what we have and stuff. But like, so when, because there could be incidences that make us shameful. Okay, we did something and therefore I'm ashamed of what I did. Maybe that's guilt. You know, but when did shame start for you? Was it like a lifelong thing?
Yeah, at a very, like, I would say probably 1, 2, 3, 4 years old.
Wow.
Yeah, this is and the reason why I know that, and I could go back and pinpoint several things in my timeline that contributed to that. So the reason why I know that is because when I was getting my master's degree in organizational leadership, I got it from the Townsend Institute through Concordia University. And John Townsend, Henry Cloud, they wrote the books Boundaries. And so John Townsend developed this organizational leadership program. He also has a counseling program. But his whole premise of those programs was to build your character, because if you can't be led, you can't lead. And if you don't have a strong character, then you can't lead a team and develop their character and bring them along. So they were huge, really big about it was kind of therapy. It was, but it was really about building your character and making you strong, you know, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, right? And so we had to do this exercise. And one of the exercises was that we had to go back. It wasn't exactly go back and pinpoint your shame points, but it was something along those lines. Because the whole premise of therapy and healing is that you have to go back to that trauma point and get back into that go back into that pain and feel it, and then have someone with you that can give you a different reaction. So I was never abused, but say for example, if I was abused, then that means that I would have to go back to that point of abuse. And then if you're a safe person, I would express to you, like, that wasn't fair. Why are you hitting me? Why are you doing that? And instead of the voice that comes into my head from that original perpetrator, you're bad. Now your job would be to, like, you're good and you don't deserve that. And you didn't mean to, you know, whatever it was, you would give me the opposite message. And what that does is, the neuroscience says that what that does is rewire your brain, and it rewires your pathway. And so it's called a mismatching experience. And so we did a lot of those types of exercises in class where we would give each other mismatching experiences. And then, so if we had any type of, you know, point where that came from, we would go back and role play it. And then you would sit in as, you know, the father, the brother, the, you know, whatever, and give an opposite message. And so then I would feel that message that I should have gotten originally of love and respect. Now it's kind of like, I don't know, it does something to your brain, the neuroscience. We studied about that. And it rewires it so that when something happens again, now my brain doesn't automatically go back to that point. It goes a different direction. And I'm able to say, okay, this is wrong. I'm going to go walk away from you, right? Once we rewire the brain, then we change our behavior because of it. But if we don't rewire the brain, then we get stuck in that cycle. So we did this whole, like, project to figure out, like, where our trauma points were. And I had several trauma points when I was growing up and when I was little that put this idea into my head that I, you know, I'm trying to be pretty, because we didn't say, like, oh, we're going to talk about this, and now I'm preparing right in front of you. That's annoying, so I apologize. So let me give you this example. So I've said before that my parents are lovely people. I have no issues with them, but they also came from shame backgrounds. My dad has a history in his family there was a lot of things that happened. My mom came from a history that a lot of negative things were said. And so that legacy just kind of comes down, right? So when I was learning how to eat, my mom would hold my hands, pin my hands down with her hand. She wasn't mean to me, but would hold my hands down and feed me so that I wouldn't make a mess, because she didn't want a mess everywhere. So that, in addition to the 12 or 20 other things that I could go through and list, one of the things that I got from that was that I'm not allowed to make a mess.
So you would cry over spilt milk, literally.
So yeah, so that kind of, because children, we don't interpret. No, she wasn't mean. She just didn't want to mess all over the floor. I get it. And she was horrified when I gave my kids spaghetti and there was spaghetti all over the windows and the walls and the floor. And she's like, oh my gosh, what are you doing? And I'm like, they're learning how to eat. And they, my son would literally be covered in sauce, right? It was the greatest thing ever. But she didn't want that. She didn't want to mess. And she would hold my hands down and then feed me. So what I interpreted that was, don't reach out and get what you need. Like food is sustenance and I need to take care of myself, right? I'm going to do it for you. I'm going to take care of this for you. I don't want you to make a mess. I'm embarrassed if you make a mess. So what is that? So that message at 1, 2, 3 years old, I can't make a mess. I'm not allowed to make a mess. So sit here and wait until I'm told what to do, and don't reach out for what you need. Don't reach out for what's going to, sustain you. Now, does she mean to give me those? No, she's not a bad person. I love my mom. She didn't know. She learned, from her mom or whatever. We don't understand. But as a kid, that's the way I interpreted it. Now, I didn't know that until I was going through my master's degree, and I started putting, like, I literally had I had pages of stuff, and I'm like, oh my gosh. And then I saw this pattern, and now I can say the pattern that I took, all these things, different things. There was things when I was in the hospital and all kinds of things that just happened. But all of that transpired into, I don't have a voice. I'm not good enough to take care of this on my own. I have to wait and be told what to do so that I don't make a mess. So now how painful do you think it was later when I started writing a book and I've got this message in my head, don't try out, you're not going to make it. Don't, all these different messages that were given to me, not because I was a bad person or couldn't. It was the shame cycle that had been given down from generation. It wasn't her fault, but she had been told those things. She didn't believe in herself. And so that transpired onto me. I'm sure her mom didn't believe in herself. It got passed down to her. It's like this legacy of messages. And now we get to an adult and I'm like, I didn't know how to say no. I didn't know how to stand up for myself. I didn't have a voice. So yeah, I was a mess.
So it's the nurtured influence in you that caused this.
Right. And then the nature part of me is the fighter.
Right.
Right. And so it's a battle.
Kind of reminds me of a story. I don't know if it pertains, but I like the story. So it's Thanksgiving. There's grandma, mom, and daughter. Daughter is a young daughter, maybe 4, 5, 6, doesn't matter. She's in the kitchen and she's watching her mother prepare the turkey. Mm-hmm. So after preparing the turkey, the mom slices the turkey in half, sticks both halves in the oven, cooks the turkey. The daughter asks the mom, hey, mom, why do you cut the turkey in half before you put it in the oven? And the mom says, well, you have to go ask your grandmother. So the daughter goes ask grandma, why does mom cut the turkey in half before she puts it in the oven? Grandma says, I don't know why your mother does it, but we had to do it because the oven wasn't big enough to fit a full turkey.
Yeah.
So she cut in half and cooked half a turkey at a time because the oven was only big enough to cook half a turkey. So the mom learns that in order to cook a Thanksgiving turkey, you have to cut in half, even though nowadays the oven's big enough to stick it in. And so I always kind of find that story humorous because that's what we do. Yeah. We don't look and see. I think I've become a little different from the standpoint that, I might have growing up been one to just kind of follow along because, as a kid, that's what you're taught to do, obey, respect authority.
You don't know any better, and they're your parents, so why wouldn't you believe them?
But I got to the point where I'm able to question things. A couple of weeks ago, we were having an off-camera conversation about wearing masks and stuff, and I mentioned, it's logic, reason, plus it's questioning things. And I'm not, this rebellious person, I don't think. Yes. But that's the thing. It's like I would look at that and be like, hey, why am I cutting this turkey in two when it fits in the oven?
Yeah.
Why am I doing something when I don't have to? Or why am I not doing something when this is better? And I think that's why throughout my career in radio and things like that, I might have been at odds with management and people in authority because the way I see things and the way they do things is illogical. Doesn't make sense. Why would I do that when this is so much easier?
Right.
Why would I want to do it that way when that way makes no sense whatsoever, but yet that boss guy or lady doesn't have the wherewithal to see that their thinking is flawed? And I'm not opinionating. I'm being real that your opinion and the way you want to do things is flawed.
Right.
Why would I want to do that? Why do I want to do 4, 5, 6 steps when I can do something in 2? Just because you don't have the ability to see it that way, why should I do that? And so that's kind of for me. It's like I have the ability to look at something, and so if I'm seeing a turkey cut in half going in the oven, I would question that. Why are we doing that? If there's someone that says to me, kind of like your macro view. Okay, something isn't working. Let's macro view it, like the tangential inking, highlighting.
I should have said that word a long time ago.
That's going to be a mainstay moving forward. And so
I'm going to ask you a definition pretty soon.
I don't even know what it means. I just like the word tangential. It kind of reminds me of Tangiers, which was the hotel and the casino.
Yeah.
One of those casino movies of Robert De Niro.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I think I have the ability to kind of process things maybe a little different. So someone says, this isn't working, this isn't very good, you're no good. Okay, well, what's the value of their feedback? Is it worthy feedback, or is it just somebody who is jealous of what I'm doing, wishes they were doing something, making a comment about a podcast, whether it's good or bad? Is it really good or is it really bad? You kind of weigh some of these things. And so that's why sometimes for me, I've gotten to the point where we walk a mile in somebody else's shoes. Okay, we might not be able to do that to fully understand them. Again, not really fully understanding the shame aspect of it. But here's what
someday I'll give you the laundry list.
Well, here's what I learned. It doesn't matter who you're with, because it sounds like a lot of outside influence from you.
Yes.
Becomes the root problem or solution.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
So for us then, and I'm going to ask you.
Because I'm very curious, very inquisitive. I'm a fighter, but you're right. That outside influence put upon me. Okay.
So for us then, the takeaway for me from this is that, which I try to do anyways, is that it doesn't matter if we understand or don't understand, because I still don't kind of understand that. It's not in my chemistry. But what I can understand is that I need to be a positive influence, like a real one, not this phony, like, oh, everything you do is great, everybody wins a trophy.
Right.
Okay, you went,
I hate that.
you went 0-10, you don't get a trophy. I'm sorry. Your team sucked. But what did you do? We did these individual successes. You had a couple hits, you never played before, and you had fun. And, okay, we're taking the successes,
right,
and we're creating a positive experience and a positive influence in realistic expectations. But that's the thing. It's like, can you write a book? Well, I don't know. Can you? Let's see what you got. Can you do a podcast? I don't know. Let's see what you got. Let's try it. Let's go after it, because it's better to have failed than to not have tried, because you're always going to have the what if I did, then what would have happened,
right,
versus the, okay, I tried and didn't make it. Or maybe you tried it and it worked. You don't know. It's always like it's kind of like oh, I don't want the girl to know I like her because, well, how is she going to know if he likes you back if she doesn't know you like her?
Right. And if she does like you back,
then it's bonus. And if she doesn't, then oh well.
Yeah.
But we don't want to put that out there because we're afraid of rejection.
Yep.
But yet we don't know.
Yep.
We don't know if it's going to happen. And
that's where we have to normalize and integrate failure and challenge and discomfort.
And maybe the fact that you liked her, but she didn't like you back, but now this other girl likes you and you discover that. Yeah. It's like, okay, that failure led to this, and now you've got, utopia.
Exactly.
And so, you just never know. Failure is going to lead to something if we don't wallow in the mire of failure and be like, oh, I failed, woe is me, woe is me.
Well, if we keep the failure on the table and not personal.
Yes. Then you can learn from it.
Then we can learn from it, and then we can move forward from it. And that's where resilience comes in, is that we personally are not a failure. It means that we were brave enough to try something and put it out there. It didn't work. So then let's tweak it and let's try it again.
See, we all need to be like Wile E. Coyote. We'll never get that Roadrunner, but we're always going to try.
We're always going to try.
Now, you may get the Roadrunner someday, but he's always going back to the drawing board, and he's always trying. Okay, this failed. What's next? This failed. We all know he's never going to get the Roadrunner.
You just dated your audience, by the way.
Yes, I know, but that's okay.
They're like,
but in the real world, there's an opportunity going back to the drawing board. Yeah. Engineers, I don't really understand the mind of an engineer because they're so stoic and they're so, very, analytical, and they're very like A, B, C, D. I'm like, where's how come G can't go before B? No, it has to be A, B. But they're not fearful of failure because they just go, they take and learn from that. I mean, you've got JPL, NASA, you've got, this massive, let's go to space. Okay, we failed, but that's not going to deter us. And look what we've accomplished. They're not afraid of failure. They go back to the drawing board. They take what they learned that was the success and the failure, and they combine it to get something better.
Right.
And that's what we got to do. So no matter who we are or who we're around or who we're with, we just need to take and be that positive influence with realism. You can do this. Try it. Your English might not be the best, but hey, you're bilingual. I'm not. Hey, you wrote a book. I've never written a book. So maybe you have 5, maybe you have 52 1 stars, but you have a book on Amazon. I don't. Go back and try something different. Be that positive influence, because like you said, with that, instead of the negative, with the rethinking, the neuroscience thing that you were talking about, that mumbo jumbo, let's be that positive influence that starts to rewire the brain in people with real expectations.
Yeah.
And so I'd ask you this, okay, from your perspective, again, shame is you're the defect, you're the problem, you're the reason why something went wrong, versus guilt. There was, you're guilty of something. So what would you give as far as advice to people that are in similar situation with you to help them overcome their shame and to help them not take everything and personalize it and be like, hey, it's just, you tried something, or you should try something, and not let yourself get in the way?
I would say that you have to find safe people, because there probably are people in your circle that are enforcing those negative messages that you have and that negative self-talk. And so we believe that we deserve, certain treatment. We believe that we don't deserve anything better in life. And that's not true. But what happens is that we surround ourselves with people who reinforce what we think about ourselves. And then it's kind of like a success in a weird way. Because it's like, it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy, like we talked about before. It's like, I'm not good enough to do this. And then there's people around me saying, you're not good enough to do this. Like, see, I told you, like I was right. And then we feel good about being right about being wrong. So we need to get around safe people. We need to be brave enough to hear the other side, of the story. We need to be brave enough to get outside information that gives us the opposite information, that we are worthy, that we are loved, that we are valuable, and we have a voice, and we have, something to offer to the world. We have to force ourselves to get into a group or get into a friendship or something, a class that will give us those opposite messages. And then it takes a long time, because there was a couple that invested in me and would tell me all the time that, I was smart and that they loved me, and all of it would just kaping, it would like come and just kaping right off my chest. Right. It never absorbed and never sunk in. So it's not something that happens overnight, but it is a process. But the more, maybe you need a counselor, but the more safe people that you get around that will give you the grace and the forgiveness and to allow you to, this one couple that I'm thinking of, Doug and Kathy, they loved me through my faults. And I knew that they knew what my faults were. And we all laughed about them, and they didn't judge me. They didn't condemn me. They didn't use it against me. Like, they just loved me anyway. And that kind of softened my soul and kind of let me start this kind of journey. And then I started seeking slowly, better information and better truths and safer friends. And then it just creates a momentum, and then you just keep going. But that's probably the first key, is that you have to surround yourself, find a safe person. If you don't have any in your community, you could reach out to us. You could, you need a safe person that will give you that opposite message, love you just the way that you are, and help you, get over that cycle. And Brene Brown, honestly, she's got a ton of really great stuff to watch, on YouTube. You can check her stuff out.
See, Billy Joel, just the way you are.
That's right.
Hey, I just want you to know that you are worthy to ride my coattails of the great Son Edom to the top. Just so you know that. You are worthy of riding my coattails.
I'm worthy of being here. Yes. I'm worthy of being your co-host. Thank you.
So for people that might be interested in Brene Brown, how do you spell that?
Brene, Brene.
Okay, so there.
Brown.
So if people want to...
Brown. So she's all over YouTube. She just started a podcast, which is now she's past podcast? Even Joe. Yeah. She passed Joe Rogan. So she's like the number. She's in the top 3, and she just started it.
Top 3. Us, her, and Joe Rogan.
And Joe Rogan, right?
Top 3.
I love Joe Rogan. Listen to her podcast, and she's got several books I've read. They're phenomenal. It explains shame, what it is, how it manifests, what it looks like, how we fight it,
I think.
And we all have it, by the way. It's just on a different
plane,
on the line of continuum. Some of us are further ahead than others, but we all
I think, I can't remember, was the last podcast or earlier this one where you said it took you up until, because you just recently celebrated your birthday, we won't say the age, but it took you up until just now, so to speak, to kind of deal with the shame. So are you over it? Or do you still have it?
No, I still have it. And I think that we all have it in some form of another until we get to the other side. And I don't mind telling you, I'm 53. So I'm not ashamed of my age. So it took me clear up until, 53 to be comfortable. Not just on, my birthday, but this has been a process in the last year or two, where I have finally felt comfortable in my skin, finally felt like I have something to contribute, to society. I'm thinking about a third book eventually. And so I don't know. I don't know, but I do want to write another book. So some of my posts on social media are geared towards subject matter that might be in a book, as on Instagram, but it's a long process, but I will never be over it, I don't think, until, obviously, because I told you about that comment that person made to me, and it just took me right back. And I'm like, okay, I have more work to do. And you kind of had to talk me off the cliff. So I think it'll always be there. It's getting better. I am way, way further ahead than what I was before.
I just think we need to stop as we wrap up here, because I know we're running out of time, but I just think we need to stop and realize, we talked about this probably in the first episode,
probably
the little successes, that we get. We're going through this lockdown, but what are the little successes that we can achieve from this? Maybe we're reconnecting with people that, family members, maybe, you did a podcast and maybe that helps reconnect with people. Maybe you're writing a book, so that helps somebody else. Or maybe you just were able to get up out of bed this morning and fix breakfast. Or maybe you were able to just do whatever the little successes are that help us to build upon the bigger successes, because that's what it's going to take. The little successes, like the pyramid, equal the big successes. And if you're more sports minded, one of the things that you could probably look at is John Wooden's Pyramid of Success. That could be something that might be beneficial, and the books that he's written. So there's people out there that can do that, but it all stems from the fact that we have to make sure that we're a positive influence, realistically, a positive influence, because sometimes we don't deserve a trophy and we need to be told that, but we can still be done in a way that's not going to trigger shame. 2, we need to make sure that, we're not too hard on ourselves. And 3, find the little successes and things that we can build upon. Okay. Ultimately, what I did failed. Maybe singing karaoke, I was really bad, but what was good about it? Well, okay. I got the courage to go up there. I got the courage to do something I probably never would have done before. So find your little successes and build on it, and then surround yourself with people that are going to be real and be true and be supportive. Surround yourself with a cast of people that you can really rely on, and hope for the best. Throw up a Hail Mary. No.
One of these days, I'm going to be brave enough to do Tuesday karaoke.
Yes, you should.
On my
your Instagram
story, on my Instagram story. I'm going to be one of these days.
Speaking of Instagram, at 2 Steps Ahead Podcast, you can find us there at Edem Rocks, EIDEM ROCKS.
And I am Tara Hoke Shiro, TaraHokeschiro.
We're on all the major platforms. SoundCloud, we're linked in my bio and at 2 Steps Ahead Podcast Instagram bio. You can listen there. Spotify, Pandora. You can Google us. Just type in TWO, 2 Steps Ahead Podcast on Google, and we pop up. Hey Siri, hey Google, hey Alexa. We're there also. TWO, 2 Steps Ahead Podcast. And then on IGTV and YouTube, you can search us there. 2 Steps Ahead Podcast, highlighting the stuff we've stepped in so you don't have to. Let yourself be great. Take your passion. Make it happen. Be tangenial.
No, don't be tangenial.
Don't be tangenial. Not good. Thanks for listening, and do tell a friend. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, guys.